What's good, good people? Vets, let's talk. We got a special guest in front of the formation today, Lieutenant Jacob Marris. How you doing today? Whoa. Before we get started, like, share, and subscribe. HBO special, help a brother out. How you doing today, my brother?
I'm doing good, Don. Just
That's
living life right now. So
that's outstanding, man. How the family doing?
they're good now that we're all together. It's definitely going good. Life's moving forward. So
That's great. What state you're in right now?
yeah, so I'm in Illinois. Came from Fort Benning, Georgia. So, but I'm back home in Illinois. I'm from Peoria. So,
Born and raised in Illinois. So
born, moved a bunch, maybe 5 times as a child. So came back to end high school and then finish college and then off into the army, and then now I'm back. So
so do you go up to Chicago sometime?
yeah, I'm not too far. So definitely
Okay.
Chicago's a great place,
I'm gonna
other
ask
than
you.
what you hear on the news. But
Yeah, I grew up in Chicago, so I'm gonna ask you a pizza question. Like, what's your favorite pizza?
uh
Giordano's.
yeah, it's either
Okay.
between, yeah, I'd probably say Giordano's.
Okay. A
But
lot of people say Lil Marty's.
yeah, they, I don't know.
The crust is a little bit better, but yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
I,
that's
I like all the sauce, so
okay.
that's
And
good for me.
a good old Chicago hot dog.
Oh
Let,
yeah.
let's
Yeah.
jump on into it, man. Let me ask you a quick question. Why did you join the military?
Yeah, so I joined the military, just because got out of high school, went where I was thought I was going to go, played a little bit of soccer. Um, that didn't really work out. And, I kind of wanted to I was sitting around doing nothing really and wanted to do something bigger than myself. That's kind of a cliche answer, but, that's really the truth. I tried to enlist a couple of times. Um, for some reason I wasn't getting enlisted. So I'm like, okay, well, I'll try this ROTC program. And, I want to get college. I'll be an officer. Actually, I have a military history, that I really didn't think about until I was sitting in a board, to get
Right,
an
right.
ROTC scholarship. And they asked me the same question you asked me. And I was like, well, actually, both my grandpas, they served in the army. My dad's dad was the last of the Army Air Corps before the Air Force um, was a thing. And then my aunt and my uncle were both in the Air Force. And then the Air Force was too easy for my aunt, she said, so she joined the Army after. So
I don't think that's no. It's not a. I don't know why people say that. Hey, that's kind of a cheesy, a cliche answer. I mean,
yeah.
the reasons you joined, it might be kind of cheesy to some, but purpose for a lot of people is purpose. They don't know what's going on and they want some
Mm-hmm.
guidance. So
Mm-hmm.
military helps a lot of people find out who they are at the end of the day. If they can deal with it, if they can't, I mean, you do pick up a lot of things from the military that help you drive on later on in life. So let's jump into it real quick. Tell us a little bit about yourself in the military, as far as like your job and how long you've been in.
Yeah, so I, did ROTC program and started in 2016, commissioned at a Bradley University down in Peoria. Um, Commissioned in September and then got shipped right off to IBOLC, which is the infantry officer basic leadership course at Fort Benning, Georgia. So infantry school. Um, Went down there in October of 2019. Spent about 9 months there doing that. And then I went to Fort Polk, Louisiana, where I was a G man in Geronimo, first of the 509th
Mhm.
Airborne Infantry Regiment. Down there being the bad guys against all the JRTC rotational units that come in. Learned a lot there. Learned a lot where we lack as a military, and be able to exploit that, which is pretty scary.
Right.
Um, but I was down there for about 9 months and then got um, DA selected up to back to Fort Benning to be a infantry platoon leader for OSIT. At my time at Fort Polk, I was a staff officer for a little bit, and then I had a platoon for about 6 months. So that was a really good learning experience. And then transitioned back to Fort Benning for the enlisted soldiers that come through both their basic training and then their infantry school. So OSIT, one station unit training.
Wow.
And then that's where, that's kind of where I got out. I blew out my knee a couple of times. I had 3 ACL surgeries, 6 meniscus surgeries, and I'm only 27. So,
wow, was it
yeah.
the jumps?
I bet they didn't help, but that's kind of
Wow.
where we ended up. So, ended up, no shame in it. I got a med board, and that kind of leaded to, as soon as that word was dropped, the toxicity and the negativity surrounding that kind of came out. So definitely have some stories about that.
Okay, with that being said, it was a program that you was chasing, right? Could you tell us a little bit of something about that program so a lot of people know? Because, like, I'll be perfectly honest, I had no idea this existed on my way
Mm-hmm.
out. If I'd have known, I probably would have took advantage of it, but I didn't know, like, because a lot of people don't know about it.
Mm-hmm.
Could you explain to us what it is? What it is?
Yeah. And I guess it's been a thing for about, the CSP, which is like a career skills program that's ran out of the education centers on posts. Um, that's been around for a little bit, but then the DoD, the Department of Defense Skill Bridge program, is another avenue. Instead of working for the CSP, which is kind of the same thing, but the
Right.
skill bridge is usually 6 months, and that can vary between, whatever internship you're doing, or in my case, leadership. But it's a great way for transitioning soldiers to um, get a foothold. So when they get out, they have a plan. The military is always talking, have a plan, have a plan, have a plan. So, and it's a fantastic opportunity if, and the keyword if, your leadership will let you do it. And in my case, I really had to fight for it. And, throughout social media and, just word of mouth, um, it's, it's a big if. So a lot of soldiers are getting stonewalled and stifled, especially in positions where they're not really needed. Their position, there's like one in a dozen, it's not a very hardcore position to have to refill.
Right.
And it's just, salty people doing salty things. And I feel like it's a big problem. So
So I take it that you had a lot of problems transitioning out of the military.
yes, yes. Thankfully, through my skill bridge program, ended up with the University of Chicago. It's called the OMAC Skill Bridge Program. It's the only one of its kind in the U.S.
Hmm.
So it's ran out of what's called OMAC, is Office of Affiliated Military. So it's the Office of Military Affiliated Community. So it's encompasses both transitioning, service members, but also caters to spouses and family members.
Oh, wow.
So they can take advantage, and they're included in that program as well. The director of that is Dr. Terrell Odom. Fantastic individual. He will help whoever, whenever they need it, and he knows the program. He knows the military. He was a corpsman in the Navy. I think he got out as a sergeant, and now he's got 3 or 4 doctorate degrees, master's degrees. Just really thriving. And a lot of people owe a lot to him, as well as the other in the OMAC community. So University of Chicago OMAC program, Skill Bridge, DoD. You got to check it out. There's a website. As soon as you put in OMAC, University of Chicago, OMAC, it'll pop up. So
Hmm. That's a lot of good information. But what problems were you having with the leadership as far as getting into the program that you was trying to jump into?
yeah, so like I said, it's always, have a plan, right? Well, I went
Right.
to my leadership with a plan. My first line, supposedly supporting me. I found out later from another few officers in my company that they were talking behind my back to the battalion commander. So that really doesn't help. But so the issue was I had it all planned out, had a mortgage. I mean, had a new house, first time home buyer, trying to get that set up. I had all that set up. I had the internship set up. And, the last step is getting that okay,
Right.
but I've had that verbal okay and through text and stuff saying that I would be able to do it, months in advance. When it came down to it, boom, I got stonewalled.
Mm.
Almost as if, you know, I was getting discriminated against for being a medical board because I hadn't been in that long and I didn't deserve it. So here's a
Oh,
quote from
wow.
my battalion commander at the time. Yeah, so the quote was, when I talked to him at first, I just got a no from my company commander. He said yes, he signed off on it, but the BC said no. So I'm like, okay, well, I want to bring you, the first sergeant. I want to talk to the BC, because I deserve to know, what it is. So the first thing he tells me is bring your ORB. So your ORB is like the SRB,
Track.
right? But for officers. So it tells you your accolades, how long you've been in, how long you're supposed to be in, all that.
Right.
And he tells me bring that. So I'm like, what does that have to do with, you already know that I'm getting out because of this reason, and it's through no fault of my own. And I had did all the stuff through the education center to get it all lined up. So he says, I don't think these internships are for people like you and only for those who have served their time. The Army owes you nothing.
Wow.
Then he went on to say, Army paid for your college, right? 4 years. I said I did the ROTC program, but it only paid for 2.5. And it was supposed to be 2, but I earned that extra half a year, through my schooling and stuff that I did for the program. So I tell him that, and he just, he basically said, no, that's just, that may not be how it's supposed to be, but that's how I see it. So I'm thinking, okay, well, for one, that's not professionalism. You're letting a internal thought and perspective,
Yeah.
stop you from being a good leader.
His preference. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So at that point, I didn't know what to do. I was closing on a house in July. This was like in June that I was trying to get the sign off. So I'm just like, okay, so I start trying to figure it out. So then I try to go and I'm like, okay, well, maybe it's 6 months, maybe that's his issue. It's just too long, which I really know what the issue was. But so I came back to him. I said, sir, here's this MILPER message about the DoD Skill Bridge program, because a lot of commanders were saying, oh, it's too long. So now we're going to try to make it 4 months. So I'm like, here's this MILPER's message. It says this about at-risk soldiers there. So it's a list of soldiers in their first contract under the age of 21, anyone separating from the Army, sooner than, they expected, blah, 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 blah. So I would fit in that category. And I told him, and he said, oh, well, you're not at risk. So I read it to him and he didn't like that. He's like, oh, I can read. And I'm thinking, well, not too sure about that, but I'll keep my mouth shut. And I just told him, I said, you're always preaching, have a plan. Now I have a set up plan and this is my future, right? It may not be the end all be all, but I have a plan and it's a solid one. And he goes, well, people have abused this program. And that's another excuse that you hear a lot is people have abused this program, blah, 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 which they have.
Right.
Some people go have a fake company or whatever, their friend's company, yada, yada, yada. Well, this was a legitimate program with a legitimate director with a prestigious university, for one. And so there's no, cutting under the rug about it. This is legit. Well, he still said basically kick rocks. So now I'm thinking, what do I do? I know that, and he would not sign the paper. On the paper, you have to sign it, disapprove, and you have to give a reason. And I'm thinking to myself, well, he can't say what he said. What's he going to say? What's that reason? So he kept trying to deny it, not sign anything. I said, okay, well, I would like to talk to the brigade commander.
Right.
Well, using the open door policies there, but using it, is not really good.
Right.
Well, he stonewalled me. He said that, oh, I'm setting up an appointment, nothing for 2 weeks. Right. And then basically I just happened to run into him and I asked him, he said no. And I said, what do you mean? He said no. The BC said he was going to, do the 4 months. Right. Or let me retract a little bit. So he said no to the 4 months. He stonewalled me from talking to the brigade commander. Then I went back and I'm like, okay, well, all I got left is 60 days. I asked the internship director, can I do 60 days? Like, this is just crazy that they're not letting me do anything. So he said, okay, yeah, we can do 60 days. So I go back and BC's like, okay, you can do 60 days, Lieutenant Morris. And I said, okay. Got that in writing on emails and text, but nothing on the actual paper because it was outside of a 50-mile radius, the brigade commander had to sign off on it.
Right.
No matter the days, right? So another 2 weeks go by. So I'm like a week and a half, almost 2 weeks from having to go and close on this house. And he said, when I ran into him, nope, he said no. I said, what do you mean? He said, no, sir. If the company commander and you are approving it, why would he not approve it? He just said, just cause. He would not give me an answer. Right. So then I, frustrated, of course. I'm like, well, the only thing I got to do right now is, go to IG. There's nothing else I can do. I've talked to him civilly, whatever. Right. So I go to IG. And I think I should have known right at first. I ended up talking to a service member, not a civilian, infantry, and he kind of, coerced me. He's like, well, you can fill out this form. But if we can't contact your command about it, how are we supposed to do anything? So I'm like, okay, well, I know I can do an anonymous thing, but whatever. So I did it. And he said, this will go to the sergeant major and he'll get back to you probably, by Wednesday, because it was a 4-day, just happened to be one. I said, okay. That same day, and I didn't check my email till, Tuesday, because it was a 4-day. And he's like, he texted me, we reached out to yada, yada, yada. And yeah, there's nothing else really we can do for it because it's really the commander's discretion. And I'm like, wait a minute, you didn't even follow through your procedures that you said that you were going to do. Oh, wow. You reached directly out to him, so now he knows that I, put in a complaint again. Mind you, this BC is about the PCS in about 3 weeks and the brigade commander. So I went back and still got denied. Then I told him, I said, you still need to sign this paper, sir. So he signs it and he says on the disapprove, it's not the best interest for the unit for Lieutenant Morris to participate in the skill bridge program outside of the 50-mile radius. Oh, so wow. I'm like, what's it matter if I'm outside or I'm inside? I'm still not going to be doing anything. So I thought, well, doing anything other than the internship. So I come back to Dr. Terrell or Dr. Odom, and I'm like, this is the deal. And he said, well, what if we make it remote? If he said the only reason is outside of the 50-mile radius, then I can make it remote for you.
Blessing.
I said, okay, this is our last shot. I've done this and I went that, and I went in and the company commander was on maternity leave too. So the timing was just horrible. So I was working with an XO who didn't want to do anything. And then the first sergeant, He's whatever. And I come in, I talk to them because they were like, they sat me down before once the second no was handed. And they're like, okay, well, we want to be able to make sure that, with the time you have here left, that it sucks, but it is what it is. And I'm thinking, it's not, it is what it is. Like, this is blatant, you know,
You can say bullshit.
yeah, it's the same old bullshit. And he's like, okay. So I said, yeah, I can do this, whatever. And then I came back after and I said, okay, well, what if it's the remote, blah, 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 blah. My first sergeant takes his keyboard and slams it on the thing, on the desk. Boom. And he starts freaking out like, oh, I'm so sick of playing the middleman, blah, 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 blah. I'm just looking at him like, you're stupid, dude. Like you're at one of the highest levels, well, higher levels,
Oh
and you're
yeah.
supposed to be setting an example. And you have myself and then another, officer sitting here, you know, you're just making yourself look dumb. And then he's like, yeah, I'll do it, blah, 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 but yada, yada. So I'm like, okay. So we went, and then eventually that one got signed off on because they had no legs to stand on, right? If you said it's because of this, well, now we have a remote. So I got that. Here's the other part of the story. So I ended up living in like a camper thing in the back of my truck for
Oh
2.5
man.
months while I did this internship. Well, 2 months, because I had to give up my house on post, you
Right.
know, help that BAH, whatever, to mortgage and everything like that. So luckily I had a fantastic neighbor that, I just parked in his driveway, uses electricity, whatever. But I was separated from my wife and my son, who was going to turn 1 over the course of this internship. And that's a
Oh,
big,
wow.
that's a big birthday,
Right.
and I realize some people will say, oh, well, we went 9 months, 18 months deployment without seeing. Yeah, but I've
They
never
didn't
done.
want to though.
Yeah, exactly. And this is a different situation. That's a deployment. This is
Right.
someone saying no to an internship that, should just be an easy, okay. And I was in a position, we're hurting for recruiting, right? So there was no one coming through OSIT. There was no one coming through infantry school anyway. We weren't doing anything,
Right.
you know? So it was just super frustrating. And, at the end of the day, I did the internship, and then exactly pretty much at the end of the internship, that's when I got my orders, and I was able to transition. But um, it was just, it was super frustrating because as I was talking to my Peblo, which is kind of like a liaison officer
Yeah.
for, um, for transitioning out for med boards and stuff like that. She's like, yeah, it seems like a big issue that, a lot of my soldiers are saying that they're getting denied CSP and skill bridge, and when I asked IG, I said, how many complaints have you got about this? And they're like, oh, only a couple on a handful. And I'm thinking, no, that's just not adding up,
Wow.
so
Man, I'm sorry you had to go through that, man. But hey, I'm gonna say I'm proud of you for not laying on your back on it. Like you got something from these guys. I mean, a person's belief system on what they should do with their life. Hey, once you wear that other shoe, it's kind of different. It's kind
mhm,
of different. I mean, I've been through not the situation that you've been through, but I've had leadership problems on my way out, and I wanted to stay in. I wasn't a bad soldier, but I had an NCO that kind of helped me transition out. It was kind of like do this or do that. So I wasn't
mhm.
allowed the military to force my hand on some things. But I am super proud of you for not, because most soldiers like, well, because like how I met you was from a post dealing with a similar problem.
Yep.
And he wanted to do the interview, but I was like, maybe we shouldn't do the interview because you're still in and you're a specialist, and that might hurt you more than
Yeah.
anything else because they might just stick it to you big time.
Oh yeah.
So,
Like
so
even when I was doing the internship, right? I'm not supposed to do any duties. They made me, and this is the worst, they made me do battalion staff duty
mm,
multiple times on 4-day weekends so that the other people in the company wouldn't have to do it. And when I talked about it and I said something about it, they said, oh, well, we can cancel your internship at any time. So they were using coercion with me during that whole thing.
oh,
So
wow,
you have coercion, you have, I guess bullying, how, the Army says it too, you know. Um, and then discrimination, like there was EO, like all this stuff I could have put. But, you know, when I saw that the IG who's supposed to be there, that system failed me, I wasn't going to try anything else because Fort Benning, you know, was having issues with their, you know, post commander. And there was I don't know if you heard, there was a chaplain who kind of, you know, wrote a note and everything. And then he ended up, they were trying to get him into a forced psychology of evaluation, all this stuff. They were keeping him off of post. They were,
Oh wow.
and I'm like, I'm thinking to myself, I can't, you know, I can't do any of that. That's just, I don't know. So if, like you're saying, and for the specialist, they could treat him a lot worse. If they're treating a captain like this, then you know, what can they do to an E4?
Oh my God.
You know,
I can just imagine.
so
Like, and he just told me he's not going to do anything. He's not going to go to legal. And I couldn't advise him, but all I could just tell him, just don't give up.
yeah,
just don't give up.
I mean, legal might be his best bet.
Right.
You know, the education center is not going to do anything. IG, depending who it is, you know, the EO office, it's I don't know. It's very scary that we have those systems in place,
right,
and they'll fail or, you know, not do the right thing. And those are the people who are supposed to be there to do the right thing.
Right. Leadership is, you're supposed to be there for the people.
Mm-hmm.
You're supposed to back the person that you're trying to groom and to being a better person. Is not,
Mm-hmm.
It's about the soldierism. Yes, I'm in the army, I'm in the military, I'm fighting for my country. But there's things that I have to do to prepare myself just in case. Like, and it can't be nothing of my fault.
Mm-hmm.
So for you leaders out there that's listening, it's not up to you to dictate how an individual lives their life after the military. It's guide that individual into a right, safe place so they can do what they need to do to survive. If people got kids, you got kids. Just think of yourself. If I were in this person's shoes, how would I think and where would I be? Don't think of how long you've been in. Let's think of what this guy's going through at the moment. What advice would you have for someone transitioning out of the military?
Yeah, so my biggest advice, and you kind of said it too, is just, you know, don't give up, right? If you have something that you want to do, you know, try to use the avenues that are there, always maintain respect, you know, as you're getting out. You know, you're not out yet. Unfortunately, you're respecting the rank, not the person. And I know it's hard, but, you know, you just got to keep going and then try to create awareness. You know, hopefully what we're doing, you know, we'll continue to create awareness for the issues that are there. But just don't give up. That's I'll have to agree with you on that. And just perseverance is definitely key. Because after the military, you know, if you don't have anything, you know, I know a lot of people, you know, they end up going back, you know, and if you got out for a reason with toxic leadership or something, you know, bad happened to you, why would you want to go back to something like that? There's great people in the military, great leaders. When I was in my ROTC program and my BOLIC instructors, amazing leaders, you know, that's who you want to be. But then when you get up and I feel like it's these higher, higher
you could say dickheads.
Officers. Yeah. I mean, it's just, you know, these BCs, these battalion commanders think they're God and they're not.
That sucks.
You know, and for the enlisted soldiers too, it's just a lot of times you just have bad leadership. And how these people get into these positions, I do not know. But
I mean, I'd like to say thank you to Sergeant First Class Shannon Ward for helping me in my transition. Hey, I got a quote for you guys. I'm about to close out here. But first off, before I close out, man, thank you for your service. Thank you for what you did. Thank you for not laying on your back on things. Thank your wife for her service too, because
she was right there with you.
She was a trooper. They always got your back. Hey, I got a quote from MLK. Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about the things that matter. Never be quiet about the things you love. Always go for what matters. Let's talk. Who's up next for formation? Out.